Play founder and CEO, esports coach at the Southern University Lab, and gamer. Discussions on the emergence of esports at the K-12, collegiate, and professional level. Let's go! Let's go play.
Welcome once again. This is your host, Christopher Turner. This is another episode of Go Play Esports podcast. Today is no different than any other day. We have a special guest. My brother, man, Moog, is on today. We're going to get to him briefly. Just to let everybody know, we're live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter right now. That's Go Play ES, GEAUX. PLAYES. We spell go the way we spell it down here in South Louisiana. Everybody asks me from other areas, what is that? You know, that's the way we spell go down here in these parts, man. But, you know, stay tuned. This is going to be a real informational interview. Trust me, he always has some gems for the collegiate space and really K through 20 period, man. If you want to learn how to build a community, and let it be sustainable on its own. This is the guy that I lean on quite often, man. Everybody gives me praise, but trust me, it comes from smart people that I keep around me, man. And this is definitely one of the individuals that I talk to on a consistent basis about issues within esports and esports EDU. But y'all know what time it is. We're gonna give control. Control, you know, is a supplemental drink. It's a meal replacement, all kind of vitamins and nutrition in it. You know the story about now. I used to be 500 pounds, but I'm not anymore. And real, you know, precise about what I put in my body now and what I continue to put in my body. And, you know, everybody that I have on this podcast that are sponsors, I have relationships with. You might have heard Hip Hop Gamer say that last episode, but it's true. It's facts for me as well. So let's get into this commercial from Control.
90% of people love statistics. We don't have any data to support that, so you'll just have to take our word for it. Control contains prebiotic fiber, the stuff that promotes healthy gut bacteria. Unlike unhealthy gut bacteria, it's healthy. It also contains digestive enzymes. They promote healthy digestion. You're probably starting to recognize a trend here. You know what else are healthy? Branched-chain amino acids. They support muscle growth and amp up your exercise performance. And MCTs help to control your appetite. 5 grams of fiber, 23 grams of protein, 22 vitamins and minerals, plus it's made with real pieces of cereal. Control. Statistically awesome.
That's Control. Go to drinkcontrol.com right now. Enter in Go Play ES. Get your 10% off that meal replacement. Without further ado, for the introduction, I might say, Moog, how you doing, man?
Man, I'm all right. I'm glad it's summer, even though that really doesn't mean much to us. But thanks for having me. I appreciate this so much.
Nah, man, I think it was a good time, man. You mentioned the summer, man. I think it's a good time to have you on, and you know, we're kind of settled, but not settled. We're still working. Give the listeners a brief introduction of who you are, man, before we get in the thick of things.
Yeah, so my name is Mike Moog Aguilar. I'm the Director of Esports and Co-Curricular Innovation for the University of Oklahoma. I've been developing collegiate esports since about fall 2016. I'm now into full departmentalization on OU's campus in the Division of Student Affairs, named as and appointed as the director in September of 2020. And now just announced scholarships earlier this year, working on venue and curriculum and everything else and in between.
So, like, you know, man, I was on a call the other day. We'll have this conversation off air, but your name came up, man, and it happens a lot. And I never tell you, but like, how is it being the director, man, starting this thing from nothing and having those big announcements as far as scholarship and getting that support from the university now? Like, how is that feeling? I know you're not done.
Far from done. But man, I'll tell you what, like this journey, I don't care if it's a D1 Power 5 university, D2, D3, public, private, community college. You know, I don't care what it is. It is not for the faint of heart. And you have to have thick skin, and you have to have a resolve that you just have to find it. Like, there's no way around it. You're going to get beaten up, you're going to get cut, you're going to bleed, you're going to bruise, and you're going to have to push for things that people are just going to completely dismiss right out of the box after the first sentence. And that's a hard uphill battle. And one of the biggest benefits is being collaborative. So the other peers in the industry, like yourself, sharing ideals, helping elevate the scene is what's collectively helped all of us. Whether or not other directors or head coaches, give a tribute to that, it's absolutely factual. And in a way, we're kind of reverse engineering and Trojan horsing each other's developments so that it legitimizes the fact that, these things are needed. They're opportunities, whether you want to scope that as a recruitment tool, an engagement tool, career services tool, bring in students for tuition money, on the business side, deal with actually impacting society and cultural elevation and evolution, creating legacy. All those things apply. And that's the problem, I think, with a lot of directors, whether they're truly innovative or just in the space, where the higher education landscape, especially in esports, is so dynamic. We have tons of resources already on campus. We have heritage within our universities. We have opportunity because of the nature of education, and students that are in the right age demographic and mindset that just need a little bit of guidance and mentorship, and they can rise to an occasion that will help push that agenda forward, creating your own champions, which are your future alumni, that supports that business model, but ultimately evolving this industry so that we can all enjoy more and more of it.
Yeah, and you talking about enjoying that industry. How important is it for an esports club, organization, anybody that's trying to build a community? How important is that community aspect to it?
So community is literally the number one thing that I preach, because if we talk about it in the context of business, then who's your future fan base? If you're not building a community around it, who's going to even care if your teams are competing in the first place? Sure, getting appraise or approval from a VP or a dean of students or a president of a university is great. That helps deal with part of the pie, that's needed. But the longer term gain is that this collegiate, professional, grassroots, it doesn't matter. You have a merch opportunity to build that. You have an influencer opportunity for fan engagement. You have an opportunity for your brand to be touchable by those that may not even have gone to college or may be interested in your community as a means to find their home for the next 2 to 4 or 6 years. And that's the core of everything, because from that same thing, if you allow students to empower them to take some ownership of that brand as well, then they'll start to innovate as well. Even if it's a more narrow scope, it can attribute to the bigger collective goals, which is building and essentially the rebirth of athletics programs within esports. And I know a lot of people don't like that parallel, but on the business back end, maybe not on the cultural front end, but on the business back end, they're almost a one-to-one copy.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you, like 110% agree with you on that statement. And let's talk about it. Like, what do you see for your program being self-sustainable in the future? We using that foundation of traditional athletics, because a lot of esports, directors kind of shy away from saying that statement. Yep. But I totally agree with you on that.
Well, so that's also the situation of everyone's specific optics of how they look at this. I'm at a Power 5 university. OU is known for football. Yeah. We're known for softball. We're known for gymnastics. That's what you think of when you think about the Sooner Nation. And in those Power 5 universities, we have contracts that do media rights. We have fan engagement organizations called like Sooner Club. We have an entire division that's focused on interfacing with traditional broadcast pipelines called Sooner Vision. And then we have our own student media tools that we have, outside of the esports energy. So those are also not quick, but they're organic alignments with the pre-existing business models on universities' campuses. So whether you want to label it athletics or not, or the affiliation, is irrelevant. The point is the business opportunity. Yes, you have to cater to it. Sure, you present it in a different way to kind of shy away from the athletics connotation because of the cultural clash between those two worlds. But at the same time, that's already built, formidable. You just tap into it. So that gives us an opportunity to build stability in mentoring future talents on air as the next casters and the next announcers, the analysts that are feeding them data, the production people that are managing scene switching, timing, professionalism, infographics. The influencers have a place in our industry way more than the others because that's an extension of companies like 100 Thieves or FaZe Clan, which immediately and publicly say that they're almost 40% or more a media and entertainment company. So these things are alignment for this specific industry, but a lot of that work, compliance, legalities, and contracts have at least been conceptualized on the athletics side. So why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So, you stated, the structural standpoint and community first. You've locked down your scholarships, and I want you to go into depth about how you accomplished that, because that's quite a feat. I think it should be celebrated. And then what's next on the priority list for you?
Yeah, so the beauty of this, I love sharing this analytics because it's not this is what I meant with the earlier statement about you're going to get bruised, you're going to get beaten, you're going to have to carry the weight. So a lot of people will look at the flagship, or not flagship, but the D1 schools, the Power 5 schools, as the ones that will make this easier, when it's been quite the opposite. The smaller schools, more agile, less red tape, less politics. Not that politics are completely gone. Everyone has politics. But those things are, variable factors, massive factors in the growth potential. That's why we have, I think, less than 10 Power 5 universities with institutional support. Whereas we have over 250 that are D1 non-powers and the rest. So we announced scholarships this last February across 7 different opportunities, so ranging from leadership, community organization and tournament organizers, production and casting, streaming entertainment influencers, obviously intercollegiate esports for competition, and then also underserved communities. As I'm tired of reading about articles, and I imagine all of us are tired about reading about articles where we talk about gender or heritage-based discriminatory and systematic issues. Well, if you're in the seat of a director's role and you're offering scholarships, who do you expect to make changes? Yeah. It should be us. And so that money that was raised for that is 100% from building relationships in the alumni network. And that is significant because it shows the community how the fan base of OU, which obviously a venerable brand in the Midwest and Oklahoma, especially in North Texas, the community around it wants this. And so while the administrations might be a little bit less agile because they're dealing with so many other things with such a diverse population, this still gets a lot of prioritization because of the demand. So we secured $100,000 in scholarship as a single donor, and then immediately announced it and put 100% of it into scholarships immediately. To also show that we're not here to put any further burden with this topic financially on the cost of getting an education. In fact, we're doing the opposite by incentivizing coming and getting an education while doing something else that might be a skill set, whether that is a path to pro model or leveraging your talents and passions as a means to augment the cost of getting an education. Both of those are completely fine tracks. But the other reality is that the industry doesn't necessarily need a ton more pro players. There are slots. That expansion is growing, but what we do need is tournament organizers. Nerd Street Gamers, NCAA, they're just tournament organizers. The same thing with production, ESPN, TBS, and NBA Finals, any of that content, Monday Night Football. That's a production company, production effort. Casters and talents all signed into that. Influencer media is also unique to us a little bit more, where we do have programs just like this podcast, where it's embraced culturally as some way to get alignment with what you care about, what you value, and get behind those that are leading the charge to empower them to do it further and just have more endurance in it. And then naturally the leadership that's going to be that middle management, upper management positions of companies like an Evil Geniuses or a Corsair or a FaZe Clan or anything in between, because they're getting the actual experience, not just a piece of paper, essentially, not to dismiss a degree in itself, but a degree is only part of the equation. The other equation is tangible skill sets that you have built experience around. You failed, you burned, you cried, you stressed, you rose above, and then you conquered it, and now you can do it in the real world to sustain a living, your household, your children, your family, and your community.
I'm glad that you went down that lane because it's a constant frustration for me. Not a big one, but it's just conversations that are being had. When we talk to those said entities that you mentioned some of them. what is the main conversation you're having with them? Because they're looking at the next 5 to 10 years as far as students with skill sets. And like right now, they're not finding them right now.
Yeah.
So like, what is that conversation like? Because, I'm not going to say any company names, but, I've had discussions where, they're saying, hey, we can't find anybody, or the students that we're recruiting, they have that paper, but they don't have those skill sets that we need to push them into the organization.
Yeah, first of all, my camera's frozen. That's awkward. I'm going to stop my cam right now. I'll fix
It's
that in a
fine.
second.
It's fine.
So the biggest thing is there's obviously different mentalities on how do we approach academic development and curriculum. So the biggest thing is always addressing what the heck is higher education about? It's about creating professionals and societal contributors for today and tomorrow, especially when we have the foresight of tomorrow. Now, that being said, anything that steers from that track, to me, needs to be seriously reevaluated, because that's literally what higher education is about. And when we lose that mentality, we stray in why we have such adversity against higher education and its value and its current societal standards. So when we talk about curriculum development, this is where I definitely will butt heads with some energies in the space. I'm more interested in renovating and evolving current degree structures versus building new structures from scratch. The reason why is how much of the industry right now has a degree in esports? I can't reference one.
Right.
Not a single person that has a degree that has the word esports in its title of awarding. So, but however, I can reference people that have creative media production degrees or business degrees or graphic design energies or certificates, or business degrees or MBAs or sports team management or education or anthropology or psychology or law. Those things are the direct alignments to take advantage of the pre-existing execution of those degrees and all of the alumni that come into it. Because what a university is doing by evolving current degrees is also adding more value back to their alumni, which also sustains that model back to contributing back. But let's say that let's look at creative media production as a degree, and typically in a communications department or a journalism department. And that CMP degree, you can specialize it. You don't have to. But if let's say that just in the verbiage of this, if you're employing somebody, and let's say you're not in esports, and let's say you have an esports media production degree, right out of the box, more than likely that recruiter is just going to toss it because the word esports is off-putting to a non-esports demographic. But let's say you have a CMP degree with an emphasis in esports. You can just drop the emphasis.
Sure.
And now you're not siloed. So, and you still have the core skill sets and the techniques that will allow you to go in traditional broadcast or in an esports world and still be more dynamic, more versatile, and a better opportunity at success. So the same applies to any other degrees or sensibilities or tracks that I just mentioned. Evolving current structures adds value back to previous alumni, bolsters the pre-existing donors to those colleges, and allows us to get a core foundation of classes that are already built that don't necessarily need to be rewritten, but just augmented. So if you're going to create a business degree, well, maybe you're creating elective courses in business analytics and esports, which is absolutely needed to talk about for sponsorships and understanding how to run operations effectively and efficiently. But yet that's not a whole need. That's not a need for an entire degree restructure. That's just augmentation to give you better versatility with an MBA or a business or international business degree.
For sure, and I never thought about it that way until because everybody's running to the gauntlet to create curriculum and to pretty much, do it under continuous studies or something like that. But if you take your degrees that you already have and just add and put a focal point, with a focus in esports or gaming, it makes much more sense. That way you don't have to create the wheel per se. But that's a good analysis, man, and a good thought process on how to get it done quickly too, because the industry is moving so fast.
Well, and that's right. So to that point, that's literally one of the biggest things that I definitely love highlighting is because academia is slow. It is real slow. And if we talk about the approval processes of accredited curriculum, that is equally just as slow. So another reason is if you're building an entire structure from the ground up, then you're going to also run into those things that we're talking about an industry that every year the game has changed.
We have new people in the industry. We have, new schools coming in that are now starting from ground zero.
We lost Mike for a second. He'll be back. Let me go into sponsor video. Kovacs. Kovacs is the biggest, first-person aimer training software in the market. I've been using it. I'm going to go into a Kovacs highlight of me playing some Call of Duty. The first person to DM me today on Twitter, LinkedIn, I'll give you a free code to download to try yourself, man. Any first-person shooter PC players out there, I'll give you a code to download the software, man. It's made my game so much better. That's Kovacs. Make sure you go to Steam and download that today. I'm telling you, if you would like a free code, first person to DM me on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'll give you a code. Let's go into T-Fossey Gaming. It's my preferred glasses for black and blue light. Trust me, man, good product. You can get 10% off it if you use code GoPlayES. That's code GoPlayES. Let's do it. All right, we back like we never left. That was T-Fossey Gaming. Moog, tell me, man, we were talking about the curriculum and everything, man, and best practices and where we see it trending. What's the next step for you and your organization, man, going forward?
So again, the nature of us, and sorry about the camera issue. I decided to unplug it, plug it back in, and then the browser just said no.
No problem.
So, the next step is just continue on our path. Like the business plan that we originally set out to do back in 2016 has been 90% executed to fruition. Just some delays naturally, but everything that we set out to accomplish is here. So that means that we now elevate into expanding it outside of the walls of OU and further within the walls of OU. So now we have more academic partners, we have more VP support, we have industry, more network and community support. Working with one of my favorite alignments, which also has a degree track alignment, is in collaboration with the Oklahoma City Police Athletics League, who, as a COVID response, spun up esports as a means to to cater and mentor inner city youth, which is predominantly the middle school age, which I love purely because I used to work for a juvenile facility. That job gave me shingles at 27. I understand really well what public servants in those environments go through. And naturally, at this time in the last, it's been a pretty hostile environment for public servants, especially in the police force. And that doesn't mean that we don't need them. But yes, we need to be doing that differently and better. And a big portion of that is preventative measures.
Sure.
A lot of times they're just reactionary measures. And that's one of the biggest problems. So when we talk about youth coupled with public service, now we have degree alignments for things like social work, coupled with CMP for bringing stuff online. And how we deploy that is in collaboration with OKC PAL. We've been supporting, right now they're only doing Rocket League as they kind of dabble in it. Plus you just don't want any things with guns involved in it with police. So Rocket League's a perfect segment for you to play in the last quarter, in the last 2 quarters. And the thing that benefits is now that I have students that have to do social work practicum to get experience of doing that very job. Well, here's another track. They can do that very thing using gaming as a means to volunteer and support inner city youth, leveraging gaming as a mentorship tool to keep kids on the right track or corrective track.
Right.
And then if we're running Rocket League tournaments, well, I have an entire production division that can also look at as a philanthropic energy and practicum to leverage those same skill sets that are not just exclusive to our needs as the collegiate teams that are competing, but literally to support, inspire youth to use this as a thing very similar to traditional athletics mentorship pipelines. And I always attribute it to like, this is probably one of the most ambitious goals of all time in regards to our seats. But my goal is to make Call of Duty less toxic in 10 to 15 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. Like one of the most toxic games of all time, Call of Duty. But how did we get here? We're talking about a 20-year-old title that has not been moderated very well since the very beginning because it didn't need to be.
Sure.
But you don't take an athlete at 18 years old and start the mentorship track. You start them at age 5 or 6 if they're that, if they're on that path. They're getting mentorship so that they're losing their first T-ball match and they're throwing a tantrum. That coach comes in and mentors them on soft skills and conflict resolution, being good sportsmen, understanding compromise, and being a team player. Well, if you have a youth, I don't want to endorse a 6-year-old playing Call of Duty, but if you have a 6-year-old playing Minecraft upstairs and they're screaming their head off because they died or something like that, how is that not the same opportunity for mentorship?
Yeah.
So you start to influence and provide guidance and context earlier in age. By the time that they're adults, they will be less likely to be the emphasis of that same online toxicity that we all know is a problem, whether that's dismissive towards a gender or bigot or anything in regards to racism or anything along those lines. That's how we help combat some of those things. More accountability to one's own actions, not just in a physical presence, but also in a digital one. And so this is one of those things that I think that millennial generations have struggled with the most because we grew up analog and then matured digital, and we had no guidance how to act and behave online. Yet we still also don't know how to teach our next generations how to act online.
Right.
Not fully and own their own personal brands and things like that. Some of it translates just in the natural sense, but there's a lot of other things that are just not prepared socially in a digital environment. So those are the bigger goals. That's one bigger goal that I'm after. That's the long term, is to think of a world where 8-year-old versions of us had all these opportunities, were endorsed and catered to and promoted as a track to more positive mental health, activity, socialization, coupled with if they had the ability to be physical and traditional athletics pipelines or just getting outside. But those that are in gaming communities, especially games like MMOs or things that have a guild kind of infrastructure in them, almost anybody that's played those games longer than a year and finally meet their digital friends for the first time at a con or at a get together, they're no different than any other community. Introverts become extremely extroverted in their trusted communities of safety.
Yeah.
And so that's the stuff that people just don't acknowledge. They don't see because they write it off as just purely playing video games with no other benefits. And there's tons of other benefits. But the way that we get there is through execution, consistency, understanding that there is no finish line right now. I think that's one of my biggest pet peeves with other directors and people in the space, where they think they come up with this great concept and that's good. That just moves the needle slightly forward. It's not a finish line though.
Yeah.
There really aren't any finish lines yet that we can even think about. As far as an industry collective. So, but yeah.
No, I definitely agree with your mindset and your statements, man. We don't have one blueprint, and we're still learning from each other and learning from our communities, because our students bring stuff to us all the time and it makes sense, and we just trying to implement it the best way we can. And wrapping up, tell everybody how they can reach out to you, how they can see your program. The floor is yours to just, put out everything that you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm Moog Diesel across all of the channels. So that's Moog, like it's spelled in my thing with the word Diesel right after. That's Twitter, Instagram. Really the primary networks. I'm also on LinkedIn for professional networking. But for the program that we built at OU, it's just ou.edu/esports. And so that will give you program overviews, scholarship overviews, and some history on what we've been and what we've been talking about today. But that will become the central hub for a lot of other things, the academic curriculum that we're about to announce. We are about to announce, over the summer for the fall, as well as the upcoming venue discussions and everything in between. And so there's a lot of obviously growth in it, and that's that point that you just made is one of my favorites. This is an industry where there's a lot of seats at the table, and everyone is welcome.
Yeah.
There is ways to exclude yourself from that table, though, which is being anti-competitive, being anti-collaborative. It's okay to be competitive on a digital battlefield, but to be collaborative on the business side, share ideas, share context, share stresses. How many people in this industry have a peer that can understand everything that we talk about?
Right.
You have no idea how powerful that camaraderie, even in our own tier, is so necessary, because, man, some of the stress and some of the uphill battle has just been insane. And this is borderline abusive. Not that anyone's deliberately trying to abuse it, but we're kind of abusing ourselves because we see a bigger vision of what we can do with this.
Exactly.
And that's not even asking for a thank you or to acknowledge me, senpai, or anything like that. That's just saying your peers in the space are your biggest resource to stay true to your path, period.
Yeah.
Even in their failures, being honest with their feedback, not toxic, but honest in their feedback, will help grow them, so that you can also use that as another means to leverage against your own administrations and your own communities to say, well, these things are happening in Dallas, these things are happening in Cali, these things are happening in Kansas or Missouri or anything in between, or these things are happening at my peer direct competitor universities or my same classification universities, and they're having these successes. These are the analytics. Because, for instance, we are now in our 4th year of Bedlam, which is Oklahoma State OU, and we're in our 3rd year of Red River Rivalry, or Red River Clash is our version of OU Texas. Right. A lot of people know the brands OU Texas. Yeah. However, nothing to my Longhorn gaming peers and the student base there. They're amazing. There's not been a university where the students haven't been pure amazing. However, I can't go and create sponsorships to generate revenue for both universities when it's the OU brand coming to the table and not the UT brand coming to the table.
Sure.
And so it's one of those things where these old rivalries that can galvanize energy and provide pride to a newer generation are just missing a couple of things to push that needle forward. But I can't hate Texas properly and ethically until it's on a level playing field.
Yeah.
And that's what sportsmanship conduct is about, is that I want to compete and win and lose to my rivalries in the proper context, not a university that's now offering scholarships to compete versus one that's just recruiting what students come there. That's a very one-sided argument when I'm able to recruit globally and they're not in that same context.
Yeah.
And so that D1 Power 5 university classification goes right out the door, because that's a completely different story. So the biggest thing I think to close this out is that collegiate esports, just like every other esports sector, is still very infantile. There is so much that is left to explore. There's so much that we can still engineer, pioneer, and innovate. And I really encourage anyone that's interested in getting into this space to just have conversations, just knock on a door. And yeah, there's going to be some people that are just ridiculously busy because you decided to choose August and September as the means to reach out. But be patient with us too. But also be sensitive to that. You know, summertime is great. The winter break is okay after the holiday, that first kind of lull in the beginning of January, and see what's going on, see what opportunities are alignment, see what ideas that you might share. And yeah, we get a lot of correspondence, whether that's a vendor, whether that's an inspiration, whether that's a student. And we try our best, very, very much so, to cater to all of it, entertain it.
Only one person.
But only one person until we can legitimize and elevate further to employ workforce.
Have a staff.
And so that's the end goal, is that we build an entire organizational chart that does cater to all the needs of the business sustainment of our universities, our efforts, which will then feed into the pipeline of the pro sector, grassroots sector, just community entertainment sector, having something that you can align with culturally, as well as giving youth another opportunity to elevate their futures, to take care of their communities wherever they may settle.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's been a pleasure, man. As always, man, you are just a person of knowledge, man, outside and inside the space, man. I definitely want to have you back, man. I want to, I'll talk to you offline, man. I think it's time for, like, you and I and probably a few others, man, to start having like weekly chats online, though, so people can get a scope of the space.
I think that too. I think we can also leverage the returning physical state programming that we're about to have in our region, whether that's a DreamHack or a PAX or any of these other things, to now use that as another means for meeting up. And also, I mean, those things take panels too. So this is something that we can bring to that region and regionality and leverage that. And it's completely aligned with the recruitment energies of our universities, as well as spreading the good word. I mean, literally,
that's it.
Is all honestly all we're after right now is for parents to stop saying it's a waste of time. They don't have to say we support it, but stop dismissing it for now. And for university administrators to at least care a little bit more and just clear the path so that we can do the work to make that university better. For the pro scene to continuously find ways of interacting with us. And for the grassroots energies to understand that, especially the public universities, are here as extensions of the very communities, regardless of whether you came to this school or not. And so that's important. You know, OU, OSU are cultural icons for the state, and there are plenty of fanatics for these two brands that never attended these colleges. And I'm sensitive. You know, we want to be sensitive to those things too, and create opportunities for them, because while they might not go, their kids might, and at the very least, they're still going to be prouder to be a part of this community.
Yeah, definitely, man. 100%. Man, it's been awesome, man. You know, I'll be talking to you soon.
Yeah, sure. As always.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for you and your community, and thanks for having me.
For sure. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mike Moog Aguilar, OU Esports, man. It's been a pleasure, man. You know what it is, man. You know what I always say. Just go play esports, man. That's all, man. Just get involved, get started. And I'll see you next episode. Peace out.